What's up guys, it's me Jeremy and today I have another awesome video for you guys, and that is my guide for baiting, or playing the bait playstyle, in League of Legends. Hopefully I can help you guys become just as good as the Koreans at baiting. First we need to understand the importance of baiting, and what it actually is, because baiting is a very hard strategy, and loads of players don't bait correctly and simply end up getting killed. When you are baiting, you are making yourself appear vulnerable or giving your opponent something that appears that they can capitalize on, when you actually aren't, in an attempt to get your opponent to overextend or get out of position. I'll go over some examples later, but that is the basic definition of baiting in League of Legends. The bait playstyle is simply just appearing to play passive while trying to bait your opponents into bad situations. Baiting is such an important concept because any skilled individual who knows the strengths of champions will not just simply try to fight you if you're stronger, so you have to trick them into a bad situation, which is the purpose of baiting. Baiting is pretty much the number one strategy used to gain advantages in high skill play, simply because a good player will be able to avoid getting killed from aggressive play. If you are playing against good players, baiting is a skill that you almost certainly need to utilize to win, and it really can just get you a ton of kills. However, it might not always be possible for you to execute a good bait. For a good bait to be able to take place, there needs to be a couple of things that are already happening. In general, your opponents need to seem stronger than you. If you have a huge health advantage, baiting will be almost impossible, because they will likely be playing very cautiously towards you. Same goes for if they have vision on your jungler, or anything of the sort. Also, baiting will be hard if your opponents have no resources. If they are out of mana, or if their ultimates and or summoner spells are on cooldown, it will likely be hard to get them to commit to your bait, simply because they know they are a little vulnerable. What it does take to successfully execute a good bait is that you need to deliberately put yourself at a disadvantage in order to appear weak, and then quickly turn it around on them by pulling something out. Baiting capitalizes mainly on the fact that your opponents will be tunnel visioning onto you because you appear weak, and then you turn that around by doing something they didn't expect, such as ulting or having your jungler come in. The situations where it is good to bait is mainly if someone is coming in for a gank, but it really works in any situation where you have an advantage that is easy to overlook, such as if you have your ultimates up and your opponents do not have their ultimates up. Be careful though, because if you are baiting, your opponents are likely committing to that fight, and if you get counter baited or counter ganked, it often ends with the worst case scenario, so just understand that baiting can be somewhat risky, and having good map awareness by warding well, and also knowing your limits, is really important while baiting. Now let's get into the types of baits, and how to execute them. I've divided them into two categories to make them a little easier to understand. The first category are the minor baits, and these baits are very subtle, and can sometimes be fairly obvious, but they are very easy to execute, so they are low risk, low reward, and they are only meant to bait someone into just barely overextending to get a quick hit off, and then you capitalize on that overextension. The next category are the major baits, and these baits are designed to get your opponents to commit to a fight that they have almost no chance of winning, such as when your jungler ganks. These baits are much harder to pull off, but are not as easily read, so they can be very successful. However, they are very susceptible to counter ganks, so be careful, as these baits are high risk, but also high reward. Let's talk about the minor baits first. These baits include things such as the recall bait, the ward bait, the clairvoyance bait, and other somewhat cheesy baits like fake disconnecting and the run bait. These baits are easily performed by presenting what looks like an easy target to your opponents, and then you turn that around by no longer becoming an easy target, and capitalizing on your opponents wanting to kill what appeared to be that easy target. However, as these baits can be sometimes obvious, they work really well when you're at low HP, as your opponent might think that they can kill you and quickly get out, but instead, you CC them and quickly kill them. The recall bait is simply just recalling in front of your enemies, and when they go to cancel your recall, you turn on them for an easy initiation. The ward bait is when you place a ward right in front of your opponents, and when they go to try to kill that ward, you turn on them. The clairvoyance bait is using clairvoyance on a bush you are in to trick your opponents into face checking. The fake disconnect bait is simply to just stand still like you disconnected, and then turn on your opponents when they get close enough. The run bait is when you make your champions move back just a little bit to make it look like you're leaving, and then you quickly shoot out your skills as they chase you down. This bait works really well when it comes to hitting skill shots. Now on to the major baits. These baits include gank baits, flash baits, engage baits, bush baits, teamfight baits, tower baits, and the most commonly known, Baron baits. These major baits consist of beginning a fight with a disadvantage, and as soon as your opponents commit, you pull out something that will easily win the fight for you, such as a strong ultimate or really just more people. It is usually a good idea to have pink wards or oracles when performing these baits, because denying vision is a huge part of performing these, as they will be impossible to execute if your opponents can see it coming. These baits are the main strategies used at high levels of play, and they are much harder to execute, but they're also harder to read and thus are more successful. These baits are mainly used when you have an ally coming to gank or when trying to engage in a fight. The gank bait consists of starting a fight that you would be sure to lose 1v1 or 2v2 or however many equal people that you have because you're at a disadvantage, but then you have one of your teammates come in to tip the fight very easily in your favor. You want to just fight normally and maybe overextend a little bit and then have your teammate come in. This bait will not work if they have vision on your teammate though, so pink wards can be very useful in this case. This bait can actually work very well if you waste your CC and then try to fight, because your opponents will think that you're vulnerable, but you might need your ganker to have some CC depending on the positioning. The flash bait is when you start a fight with really low HP and then flash out as your allies clean up. This can cause your opponents to tunnel vision really hard onto you, and then your allies can just kill them while they chase you down and you live because you're kiting. But this bait is only really okay if you have flash or any other escape move. The engage bait consists of baiting your opponents to engage by appearing to run away, but then being ready to fully turn onto your opponents and quickly burst down their engager. These engage baits work really well in small skirmishes, such as 2v2 fights in the bot lane, or if your opponent's initiator is not very tanky. It is very similar to the run bait, except on a larger scale, and often consists of running away and then using gap closers to quickly jump in. The bush bait is where you appear to be alone by having your team be in a bush, and then your tank gets the other team to try to go for them, and then you bait them into that bush for some easy kills by your team. Make sure that there are no wards in that bush though, or you can get easily counterbaited. The teamfight bait is similar to the bush bait, just without a bush. Have your tank run in alone and bait them towards the rest of your team, causing them to overextend and giving great positioning to your carries. The tower bait is somewhat difficult to execute because it's kind of hard to fall for, but it's when you are pushing to take a tower and then you initiate a dive on your opponents while the tower has little to no HP left, and then quickly finish off the tower and then your enemies. The Baron bait is the most commonly known bait. Simply just pink ward or have an oracles there and have your team sit by Baron in the bushes. Then when your opponents go for you, you jump on them. All it takes is to make your opponents think you are doing Baron. So, hopefully you guys learned a thing or two about baiting. I'd love it if you guys could support me with a like or feedback in the comments. And if you have any questions, I'd love to answer those in the comments too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.